Good evening, everyone. My name is Sanjay Singh, and I have 14 year plus of experience into IT training field as well as into production. And I'm working as a cloud consultant and cloud architect. I do have certification in the same domain where I have certification into Microsoft Server Administration, Microsoft Azure Fundamental, Microsoft Azure Administration, Microsoft Azure Architecting and Designing, and Azure Networking, Azure Security, and hybrid infrastructure into Microsoft. Apart from Microsoft domain, I have certification into AWS Cloud as well, and I have certification into AWS Cloud Practitioner, AWS Cloud Solution Architect, Professional, AWS Networking, and AWS Security. Apart from AWS domain, I have certification into Cisco routing and switching, Huawei routing and switching, and I have certification into Microsoft as a MCT, Microsoft Certified Trainer, into AWS as a AWS Authorized Instructor, and into Huawei as a Huawei Authorized Instructor. So that's a quick introduction about me. Let me start our topics, webinar topics, which we are going to discuss. We are going to discuss about introduction to cloud, Azure reasons and availability zone, as we are going to understand Azure for our applications, for our deployments, for our innovations. So we will understand Azure infrastructure, then introduction to Azure services, which we can use, which engineers can use, and then lab on IoT, Internet on Things. So let's start with, first of all, basics. First of all, what is cloud? So when it comes to your end, if you have to define what is cloud, what would be cloud computing, so how you will define, there would be lots of definitions which we can use. So there is a standard definition. If you're going to access any IT service over the internet for which we will pay, that is called cloud computing. Any IT service over the internet, if you're accessing, it means you are using cloud computing and you're paying for that service. So we all are using our cloud services into our day-to-day activities as well. So like we are using mobile phones. In mobile phones, we're using OneDrive, iCloud, Google Drive. Correct. So that is, these services are known as basically cloud storage services, correct? Where you can store your data, which you can retrieve if your device lost, or if your device is corrupted, you would be able to recover your data, your contacts, your photos, pics, correct? Just because you store your data into a storage, which is not in your phone, which is not in your mobile phone. So similarly, if I need one server, if I need a storage, if I need a network device, if I need a analytic tool, if I need a AI service, ML service, correct, or resource for AI and ML, and I don't have infrastructure and I need to build a application. So cloud service provider will give you resource where you would be able to deploy your application, where you would be able to do your dev and test, where you can test your application, you can do innovation, correct? So when it comes to cloud computing, you would be able to access compute, networking, storage, analytics, and many more services, or I can say most of the IT services over the internet, and for which you will pay that, just because that is the concept of cloud. Pay as per your utilization, similar to your electricity bill, similar to your postpaid mobile connection. You have to pay for your services which you are utilizing, and your service provider will meter your utilization, correct? And for metering purpose, there would be subscription. There would be a unique subscription similar to your account ID. If you will purchase any OTT application, so you will get a unique account ID, unique customer ID. Similarly, if you will purchase a postpaid connection, you will get a customer ID, which would be unique and which your service provider will use to generate your bill. Similarly, in cloud, there would be subscription, and based on the subscription, I will receive my bill. When it comes to cloud benefits, so in cloud benefits, first would be high availability. What it does mean by high availability? High availability means what would be the downtime, maximum downtime, or you can say in other words, SLA, service level agreement, through which you will define if there would be some disaster. So this would be the maximum downtime, or this would be the uptime, correct, for your application, that we are going to define through high availability. So high availability is a feature of cloud, just because you would be able to deploy your application into data center or across the data center, across the region, and through which you would be able make your application highly available. In Azure, we have options where you will get SLA. So again, SLAs are defined into number of nines. So we have SLA 999, we have SLA 999.5%, and 4 nines within the reason. Correct. So within the reason, you will get these SLAs, and based on those SLA, you will get downtime for your application or your service which you're using. So now you can use high availability option and you would be able to make your application highly available. That is called high availability. Fault tolerance. So by default, for few services, Azure is offering you redundancy where you will get replication. Your data will be replicated either into within the data center or across the data center or across the region, but you have to select your option. Or if you're going to use any PaaS service, platform as a service resource, so Azure will offer you default redundancy through which you would be able to get fault tolerance for your data which you're storing into Azure storage. Scalability. Resources are scalable. Now, what it does mean by scalability? Scalability means if I'm going to host one web application, let's assume. So being an engineer, okay, so I will do innovations. So for my organization, I'm going to host one web application. So web application which is hosted on this computer, this virtual machine. Correct. And to host your web application, you will get some basic requirement, basic hardware, compute requirement. Assume that there is a minimum requirement, which is one virtual CPU and 1 GB RAM for your application, and which can handle a less than 100 requests per second. Correct. What if I'm getting some spike on my application and my number of requests are increased? Now I'm getting more than 500 requests. Correct. So it means now my current compute infrastructure cannot handle these and my performance will be degrades. Correct. So in that case, how I will increase performance, how I will handle my current traffic, what I will do, I will change my compute resource, which is known as scaling. So when it comes to scaling, so we have two types of scaling, vertical scaling and horizontal scaling. Correct. So in scalability, you would be able to increase or decrease your compute resource. That means anytime I can increase my number of CPUs, my RAM, which I'm using, I can change my virtual machine size at any time. I can change my compute resource size at any time. That is called vertical scaling. Correct. So anytime you would be able to scale up your resource or scale down your resource based on your requirement. So resources are scalable into cloud. Correct. You will get scalable resources. Elasticity. You will get elastic resources. Now, what it does mean by elastic? So elastic means here in vertical scaling, basically we need to monitor our application manually. And then we need to take decision to scale up or scale down, to increase or decrease our compute resource manually. Correct. But when it comes to automatic, so in Azure, resources are elastic. So based on the some threshold, your resource will be automatically upgrade or downgrade. It will increase or decrease. That is called elasticity, and this feature is known as auto scaling, which comes under into horizontal scaling. Now, what is horizontal scaling? Horizontal scaling means rather than increasing or decreasing size of your existing hardware, what you will do, you will create another identical instance, more than one instance into your account, which is known as horizontal scaling. So rather than increasing or decreasing size of existing hardware, we will create multiple instances. That is known as horizontal scaling. So if I'm creating, how I will create multiple instances. So basically what you can do, you can use auto scaling. In auto scaling, you will provide a threshold to increase and to decrease. So there would be two thresholds which you will configure for increasing and decreasing your instances. Correct. So whenever your auto scaling group will reach to that threshold, your auto scaling group will automatically increase. So based on the demand, if demand grows, it will automatically add instances. If demand degrades, it will automatically remove instances. Like we are nowadays, e-commerce website, they are using auto scaling. They're using auto scaling, they're using schedule scaling. So in sale days, correct. So there would be more hits as compared to normal days, correct? So it means there would be more server requirement for you. e-commerce organizations like Amazon, Flipkart, eBay, correct? So what they will do, they are configuring auto scaling. So based on the demand, they will get a identical instance which will handle the traffic, current traffic, and traffic will be distributed among multiple instances which would be identical. That is called elasticity. Global reach, you would be able to create your application, your resources into anywhere, correct? Just because public cloud service provider, they are offering you service into multi-region, so you can choose your region or region which would be nearest to your end user. You would be able to deploy your application. Customer latency capabilities, what it does mean, it means you can, again, you can deploy your application near to your end user so that your end user will not face any latency, correct? That is called latency. If you want, you can check this. So like let's assume if I'm in India, correct, central India or west India, correct, and I need to check, I'm going to deploy application, so and I need to reduce latency, I need to improve performance, and I'm not sure which data center would be nearest data center for me. So I can do a speed test through which I would be able to understand which would be my nearest data center. So as you can see, this URL, azurespeedtest.azurewebsite.net, it will give you latency from your location to your nearest data center. So which would be your nearest data center? As you can see, right now I'm getting West India, where latency is 102 milliseconds. And it will be reduced. Basically, it will take 15 minutes, up to 15 minutes to give you constant result, correct? So you have to wait for 15 minutes, then you will get a constant result through which you would be able to decide that this would be my nearest data center where I can deploy my application. So again, if you have to deploy application into your end user's location, so you would be able to do that just because services are global. Agility, you would be able to quickly deploy. You can quickly deprovision or deprovision your resources into Azure. You would be able to do mistakes as well on cloud. Why? When it comes to learning, correct? So in learning phase, basically, if we will do some mistake into production environment, this would be a challenging task where you will get escalations. So what we can do on cloud, we can do mistakes easily just because we can quickly provision resources, we can quickly deprovision resources. If there would be some mistake, so I can deprovision my resource and I can recreate my resource immediately. So resources are on demand. I would be able to create my resource immediately, correct? So it means freely I can do mistake. And if we will do mistake, it means we will learn from our mistakes, correct? Predictive cost considerations. So you would be able to predict your cost just because your service provider, which is running machine learning algorithm, and through machine learning algorithm, it will calculate your predictive cost. It will predict your future cost based on your past data, past utilization, and current utilization. So based on your past bill and current bill, you will get a future bill as well, forecast, which is known as forecast. Disaster recovery. So what is disaster recovery? So when it comes to application, so assume my application which is hosted into US East, and if there would be some disaster into US East due to tsunami or due to a storm, US East region that is not available, that is down. It means there would be downtime for my application, correct? So how I will protect my application, how I will make sure that I can reduce this downtime, how I will improve my availability of application. So I will create a disaster recovery in which I will create a secondary site. Might be this would be Central India or West US. So in Central India, I will create same application. There would be replication from US East to Central India. And whenever there would be some disaster to my US East region, I will do failover to my secondary region, which would be initially standby. So in disaster recovery, in failover condition, this will become active region. That is called disaster recovery scenario. Correct. Then security. There would be different layers of security which you will get into cloud, where you would be able to filter your traffic. You would be able to authorize only persons who would be responsible for that respective department through physical security. You can filter your traffic based on the incoming and outgoing data, port protocol. So it means we would be able to, and again, data and rest will be encrypted by Microsoft Azure. So you will get encryption where Azure is using AES 256-bit encryption to encrypt your data. So data in REST will be encrypted by Azure. In transit, you will encrypt your data by implementing SSL. You can filter your traffic by inbound and outbound firewall rules as well, which you will get into Azure, into your services whenever you will deploy your services. So these are the benefits of cloud for Azure architectural components when it comes to component. So how we will define, let me explain you. First of all, reasons. So when it comes to Azure architecture, regions come first. So services are regional into Azure. So Azure offers more global regions any other cloud provider. 60 plus regions, which would be into 140 countries. If I will compare with AWS, AWS is also a cloud service provider. So into AWS, we have 26 regions and 84 availability zones, that means data centers, correct, into different countries. As compared to other cloud providers, you will get more region into Azure. We have 60 plus region into Azure, correct. So it means you will get more granularity. You can pick your regions, you can deploy your application into your end users location. That's because we have more location as compared to other service providers, correct. That is called region. Next, inside your region, you will get availability zones. Now, what is availability zones? So availability zone is a data center. That is known as data center. When I'm talking about data center, so what would be data center architecture? So this would be your availability zone in which you will get a rack. So there would be racks which will be established into data center. So that is data center architecture. And inside your rack, there would be servers, hosts, which will be placed inside your rack. And all these racks are connected to common source of power and common source of network. Correct. So whenever you will deploy any virtual machine, your VM will be placed on a rack, either on rack 1, rack 2, or rack 3. Correct. And all these infrastructure is a shared infrastructure that is known as shared tenancy. Correct. Till then, you are not going to purchase a dedicated host from Azure. That is called data center, and this data center is represented into Azure as a availability zone. You will get more than one availability zone inside one region just because of compliance, just because of high availability and redundancy purpose, so that I can create a high availability scenario for my application where I would be able to deploy my application into multiple data centers. Why I will deploy my application into multiple data centers? Just because all these data centers, as you can see, availability zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. So it means we have 3 data centers within a region. Assume this would be US East region. So US East region in which we have 3 data centers. The data centers will represent your physical location. So there are 3 physical locations for Azure where you can deploy your resources into US East region. Now, all these data centers are isolated from each other. They all are isolated in terms of hardware, in terms of power, in terms of network switches. Correct. So if there would be some disaster to your data center 1 and you deployed your application into multi-data center, multi-agent environment. So if there would be some downtime to your availability zone 1, still your application will be available and accessible from other data center within the region. That is called high availability scenario. Correct. Just because all these data centers are isolated from each other, and but they all are interconnected with less than 2 millisecond link, which is known as high throughput fiber link, private fiber link. That is the architecture of availability zone within the region. So availability zone means data center. We're talking about data center. When it comes to your end, if you have to learn about cloud services for engineers who are going to adopt cloud technology, who are going to use cloud to innovate or to build their solution, to test their solution, to develop their solution. So what services are available, which is nowadays available and which is nowadays in boom, correct? So services you can pick and you would be able to deploy your solutions. Like if I'm working as a DevOps engineer, so DevOps is right now in boom, correct? So for automation purpose, so if you want to become a DevOps engineer, so DevOps tools are available on Azure, which you can use and you can automate your infrastructure. You can automate your deployment. Similarly, if I'm a data engineer, I'm working as a data engineer and going to use big data tools through which I would be able to do analytics. I can transform my data. I can ingest my data. And after transforming my data, I can present my data to different sources. so that I would be able to analyze my data. Correct. So you will get tools on Azure for this also. If I'm working as a DB admin, I will get different type of databases which I can use. Correct. If I'm working as a system admin, infrastructure admin, so you will get services related to infrastructure as well. If I'm working as a network admin, so you will get resources for network admin as well. So there are resources which you will get, and based on those resources, you would be able to deploy your applications. Let me start with first topic, which is Azure compute resources. When it comes to compute, so in compute, we have Azure virtual machines. Azure virtual machines, which comes under into infrastructure as a service. If we will divide cloud, so cloud, which is divided into three categories, three service model. So first service model is known as infrastructure as a service, in which you will get more customization as compared to other model. Then second model would be PaaS, platform as a service, where you will get less customization as compared to infrastructure as a service. Then third model would be SaaS, software as a service. Let me explain you. If I'm talking about infrastructure as a service, so what it does mean? Let me give you one example, and through that example, we would be able to understand this concept. So assume I'm going to deploy two-tier application. When I'm saying two-tier application, so what it does mean? It means I'm going to deploy front end, which is known as web tier, and I'm going to deploy my backend, which would be database. Correct. So I'm going to deploy two-tier application into Azure. To deploy two-tier application, I'm going to use infrastructure as a service. If I will use infrastructure as a service, so what I will do, I will create two virtual machines. First VM, which I'm going to use for web application, and might be I'm going to deploy .NET application. Correct. So I will use Windows OS, and I will deploy my run codes application data. Similarly, I'm going to deploy SQL database. So for SQL database, I will use Windows Server, where I will deploy SQL database. So Azure will give you infrastructure. Azure will give you one virtual machine with required operating system. Now, inside your virtual machine, you would be responsible for managing your resource. It means I will get a virtual machine with my operating system, which would be Windows Server 2016. Correct. And now I have to access this VM, and I need to install IIS services. After installing IIS services, I need to install my runtime. After installing my runtime, I need to configure my web application. I need to implement my code. I need to publish my code inside my virtual machine, so that my web server will be live. Similarly, for database, what I will do, I will use my virtual machine. I will install SQL Server. I will configure my database. I will connect my DB with my web application over port number 1433. This would be your port, firewall port, which you need to open. So you will use Azure infrastructure. Again, here we are customizing as per our requirement. So yes, we can customize our application based on our requirement into infrastructure as a service. But you should have knowledge of infrastructure in that case. When it comes to developer, so if I'm working as a developer and I don't have knowledge of infrastructure, so why I will bother myself for infrastructure related services? So in that case, Azure is offering you PaaS solution, PaaS resources into Azure. Now, what is PaaS? So in PaaS resources, basically, you will get a ready to use infrastructure. When I'm saying ready to use infrastructure, what does mean? It means for my web application, let's assume I'm a developer, and I'm working as a .NET. I have expertise into .NET or into Java or PHP, Python, Ruby. So based on my expertise, I will select one runtime on Azure. So whatever runtime I will select, Azure will recommend me one infrastructure for that runtime. Correct. Let's assume if I'm selecting .NET 3.1 LTS. So this would be my runtime. If I will select my runtime, Azure will offer me one recommended hardware, compute resource, infrastructure. So I'm not going to set up this infrastructure. I'm not going to manage this infrastructure. Infrastructure will be managed by service provider. Why? Just because it come under into platform as a service. So I will get a infrastructure with my runtime. Correct? Which runtime? Which I selected. So here I need to only publish my code, which I can publish either through Visual Studio or through CI/CD pipelines, where I can use Azure Repos, GitHub, Bitbucket, correct? So I can use all these CI/CD options through which I would be able to do deployment. So which is known as PaaS. So I'm not going to manage infrastructure. I'm not going to manage hardware, which is required for my application. So in PaaS, basically you will get business continuity as compared to infrastructure as a service. Just because you are not managing your infrastructure. So if I'm not managing my infrastructure, it means I'm focusing on my business continuity. I'm focusing on my code, being a developer. Similarly, when it comes to SaaS, software as a service. So in SaaS environment, you will get an application which will be developed by your service provider. You have to access this application. Who can access this application? That means identities. You would be responsible for that. And with what permission, which is known as RBAC, role-based access control. With what permission they will access this application, you would be responsible for this. So application is built by your service provider. You should use this application and you would be responsible for data and accessibility of this application. You would be responsible. Correct. That is called SaaS, software as a service, like CRM, SharePoint, Office 365. All these are example of SaaS applications. OneDrive, Dropbox, correct. Document sign. All these are options of SaaS application. So you will get virtual machine into compute resource. You will get app services which come under into PaaS solution. So virtual machine come into infrastructure. App services come under into PaaS solution, where you would be able to host your web application, your mobile application, and your API application, API apps. You would be able to host, and underlying infrastructure will be managed by your service provider. Container instances, which is nowadays popular. What is container instances? So I hope you all heard about Docker and container. So if when it comes to containerized application and you need service on Azure where you would be able to deploy your container images. So we have container instances, which is again PaaS. So it means underlying infrastructure will be managed by Azure. You would be responsible for your image only. But if I'm not going to use Azure service, then what would be the infrastructure where I will run my container images or applications? So you will use Azure VM, Azure virtual machine, or you will use a system, physical system, which would be either your laptop or your desktop to host and manage your container application. So if I'm using Azure virtual machine, so I have to download Docker, Docker engine inside my virtual machine. Same, if I'm using for physical system, I have to download Docker engine inside my physical system. After downloading Docker engine, what I will do, I will create my image, which is stored into Docker Hub, and that is known as Docker image. So I will create a Docker image for my application in which I will bind my application with minimum binary requirement and with dependencies and user portion of your operating system, which will be bind inside your image. And using that image, you would be able to deploy your container. That is called infrastructure as a service. But when it comes to PaaS, so Azure will give you a infrastructure directly where you will bring your image. Rather than installing Docker, then creating your containers, directly you have to bring your image, and through your image, Azure will spin up one container for you. That is called container instances into Azure, which comes under into infrastructure as a service. Next option is Azure Kubernetes services. When it comes to orchestration, automation, where I need some tool which would be responsible for deploying my application on particular nodes inside a cluster, and which would be responsible for recovering my node if there would be some issue, if there would be some error inside my node. So you can use AKS, Azure Kubernetes services into Azure, which is offered by Azure. Similarly, we have Windows Virtual Desktop that is also now available. Rather than purchasing separate license for RDP clients, like I'm going to use Citrix web app, correct, or Citrix Gen desktop. So you have to purchase license. You can use Windows Virtual Desktop for Azure, where you would able to share your desktop with some applications which you will allow. That is called Windows Virtual Desktop. Next, when it comes to database, so for database we have container storage blob, disk storage, Azure file storage. Correct. So storing your data into Azure, what options are available where I can store my data into cloud? So you would be able to store your unstructured data. When it comes to storing data, we have three types of data: structured data, semi-structured, and unstructured. Correct. So if I have to store unstructured data, now what is unstructured data? Unstructured data means data which I cannot predict. If I cannot predict format of my data, which I'm storing, that is known as unstructured data, like images, PDF, video, and your Excel sheet, text file, document file. So I cannot predict my format of my data. So I will store that data into unstructured storage, which would be available into Azure as a container storage, and that is known as blob or object-based storage. When it comes to storing your data for read and write operations, you will get block store, which would be disk storage. If you have to connect your storage to multiple systems, which is known as shared storage. So you would be able to use that by Azure File Shares, which will offer you SMB protocol, SMB 3.0, and using SMB 3.0, you would be able to share your data to among multiple virtual machines, multiple servers inside Azure or inside your on-premises as well. That means outside Azure as well. So these are the options for database services. When it comes to PaaS solution, so in Azure we have Azure Cosmos DB. So again, this would be a database in which you will get high availability, you will get multi-region database, which will be replicated across the region. So it will help you to build your application. Like if I'm going to build one application, which would be a gaming application, correct? For gaming application, I need a database just because my application, it will work across the region. If my application is accessible across the region, it means I have user from different regions. So I need one database which should be available into multi-region, and there would be replication so that whatever live score would be there, ranking would be there, so it will be available in real time. Correct. So real time synchronization would be there, and you would be able to use this database into your online gaming. Then we have Azure SQL database, so which would be similar to SQL database. In Azure, you will get PaaS. So Azure would be responsible for underlying infrastructure. You need to only create your database and you need to store your database only. When it comes to Azure database for MySQL, so you would be, if your application which supports MySQL database, so yes, you will get a managed database which will be managed by Azure, and you have to only connect this DB with your application on port number 3306. When it comes to SQL database, port number would be 1433. Azure database for PostgreSQL. When it comes to PostgreSQL, yes, that is also supported on Azure. And if your application, based on your application requirement, now how I will choose which DB I need to use, Cosmos DB, Azure SQL DB, or Azure database for MySQL or for Postgre. So it depends on my application requirement. It depends on my project requirement. It depends on my client request. So based on the request, based on the requirement, I will choose my DB. That is also come under into PaaS. That means underlying infrastructure will be managed by service provider. Even this database engine, that will be also managed by your service provider. You only need to create DB and you need to connect your DB with your application. When it comes to IoT services, so in IoT services, we have different options which we can use. So, and we would be able to create our application which requires Internet on Things. First of all, we need to understand what is IoT, how we will define IoT. Define IoT. Nowadays, we have smart devices, correct? Like water draining system, smart door, smart ship, smart mobile, smart car. So if I'm going to purchase nowadays car, if I'm purchasing a top model, so you will get a application which you will install inside your mobile phone. So through your mobile, you would be able to start your car engine. You would be able to stop your car engine. You can start your AC, your car AC, correct? So we are using IoT services. So these resources are IoT enabled resources. So Internet of Things, that is a network of internet connected devices, correct? So through which your service, your application will receive, send and receive data. So you would be able to send and receive your data, and based on the data which you are receiving, you would be able to make your decisions. You can push your updates. So if there would be some bug, if there would be slow performance, any issue into your service, into your water draining service, into your smart door, into your mobile phone, into your car. So you will push your updates, security updates, or your bug updates, so which will resolve your issue and which will increase performance of your application. To increase performance of my application, to protect my application, I need data. So your application will be connected with your service, and you will receive continuous data through which you would be able to send data as well. So you can send or receive data to IoT devices. When it comes to Azure, so being a IoT engineer, if I'm working as an IoT engineer and I need to deploy my application, so what options are available into Azure? So first option is IoT Hub. IoT Hub. What is IoT Hub? So basically what I will do, I will select my sources. So either my source would be mobile phone or my source would be a car, correct? Or my source would be a water draining system, automatic water draining system. So first of all, I will connect all these sources with my IoT Hub, and I will ingest data. I will receive data. I will send data. Data will be available into IoT Hub. This data I will send to for insights, so that I would be able to get insights. This data I can send for monitoring, for insights, or for application, so that I can build my updated version of application based on the data which I'm receiving. I can use machine learning algorithm through which I can predict, and I can push my updates, or I can build a new application based on the data which I'm collecting. That is called IoT Hub. And this would be again PaaS service into Azure. That means managed service, managed by Azure. Next option which we have is IoT Central. What is IoT Central? So IoT Central, basically same option would be there. So we are going to use again SaaS application, software as a service application, which is pre-built, correct? And you will get industry specified templates. It means if I don't have knowledge of coding, if I don't have knowledge of network languages through which I'm going to write scripts, so no worries. You can use IoT Central Service into Azure, which is a SaaS solution, software as a service solution, in which you will get templates. You can pick your template. There's no requirement of deep technical knowledge, correct? And you would be able to connect your service, you would be able to manage your service, you would be able to monitor your service, and it's a highly secure and scalable service just because it's provided by Azure, and Azure would be responsible for this service. So this will be built on top of your IoT Hub, where you will get 30 plus other services as well into IoT Center. Next would be Azure Sphere. Now, Azure Sphere is a secured application, secured platform. Again, that is also comes under into software as a service, and Azure will offer you a secured environment. Assume I'm going to build one washing machine, which would be a smart washing machine, or I'm going to build one smart fridge. So what I want whatever, just because my fridge, my washing machine will be connected with internet. So there would be chances of hacking, or there would be chances of tampering. So might be any hacker who will tamper my chipset, who will gain access of my chipset. So to protect my hardware, to protect my chipset, Azure is offering you Sphere OS, in which you will get Sphere MCU, secure CPU, secure chipset, which will be designed by Microsoft. So now your fridge is certified, or it is going to be used Microsoft MCUs for through Azure Sphere. So which will ensure you that you would be able to push your updates securely. Only Microsoft, or only your support team, your organization support team, they would be able to push secure updates only to your devices, which is connected to through internet to your application. That is called Azure Sphere. So in Azure Sphere, you will get secure environment. You will get microcontroller units, which is known as MCUs. You will get operating system, which would be based on the Linux, and you will get Azure Service Trust, through which you would be able to deploy your secure update through your application. That is called IoT. So these are the services which is available on Azure for IoT engineers. Next, when it comes to big data. So again, when I'm working as a data engineer into my organization. So working as a data engineer, what options are available on cloud for me to do big data analytics? Correct. So when it comes to big data, how I will understand that my data is a big data. Correct. So there are three factors which you would be able to understand that your data is big data or normal data. First of all, velocity. Velocity of the data. Second is volume. And third is variety. Variety. First of all, velocity. Now, what is velocity? How quickly I'm retrieving, storing my data, ingesting my data. I'm ingesting my data into real time or near real time or periodic data or batch data. So it depends on your velocity, how frequently you are ingesting your data. Volume, in which amount you are ingesting your data, you're storing your data, you're receiving your data into MB, into GB, into TB, or into PB amount of data. That is known as volume. Then variety. You are receiving data into table or to TB or photo or any audio or video or any social media data. So there are three V's. On basis of those three V's, you would be able to decide that your data is a big data. So using big data technology, it will help you to extract your data, to process your data, and to analyze your data, which would be large and complex, and you would be able to make decisions after transforming your data. You would be able to take decisions, your business decisions. So again, there are multiple tools, the third-party tools, which you can use to do big data analytics. When it comes to Azure, so on Azure, which service I can use and services which would be available for big data analytics. So on Azure, first of all, we have Azure Snaps Analytics. When it comes to Snap Analytics, so what benefit you will get, and this service comes again into PaaS solution, platform as a service. So first of all, you need to again select your sources. So might be my sources would be services or DB, databases, or might be files. So these are my sources. So what I will do initially, I will connect my tool Snap Analytics with my sources, and I will ingest my data. First of all, I will ingest my data. Then next process would be I will transform my data. I will transform my data. After transforming my data, what I will do, I will store my data in sub storage. After storing my data, next process would be I will serve my data. I will serve my data. I will serve my data to different sources. So here you will get integration with Azure Data Lake Storage Generation 2, where you would be able to store it. You will get integration with Apache Spark. You will get pipelines. You will get Studio, where you would be able to design your application. You will get Snaps SQL cluster, which would be responsible for transforming your data. So this feature, this service comes under into PaaS for big data analytics, and you will get again components like Spark, Snaps SQL. You will get a Snaps pipeline for data factory, for ETL, for extracting, transforming, and loading your data. And you will get Studio, through which you will get unified experience to build your solution. Next service is Azure SD Insight. So when it comes to Azure SD Insights, so if you have requirement where you need to use third-party tools, third-party services through which you can do your analytics. So same process would be same, but right now we are using Azure SD Insights, in which you will get big data clusters and you will get Hive support, you will get Apache Spark support, Kafka support, HBase, Chrome. These are the big data applications which is supported on Azure SD Insights. So it means you will get third-party support as well. So flexible with multiple purpose big data platforms, and it supports multiple technologies: Hadoop, Spark, Kafka, HBase, Hive, Storm, machine learning. So again, depends on you. If you want third party, you can use Azure as the Insights. Then we have Azure Databricks. Next and last service into Azure for big data analytics. When it comes to Azure Databricks, so Azure will give you Azure Spark. If your requirement is Apache Spark, so you can use Azure Databricks, which will give you same. You will ingest your data from sources. You will transform your data. You will store your data, and then you will serve your data to different sources for business decisions. So big data collaboration platform, it's come under into PaaS. You will get unified workspace for notebook, for cluster, for data access management, and for collaboration. It's based on Apache Spark. You will get integration with common Azure data services as well. So based on your requirement, you will pick one tool through which you would be able to decide your decision. You can build your decisions. You can make your decisions. Next, AI, artificial intelligence. When it comes to AI, so what services? If I'm working as an AI engineer, or I'm going to choose my career as an AI engineer into cloud on Azure, so services which will help me to build my solutions. So first of all, what is artificial intelligence? So AI is the simulation of human intelligence, first of all, and capabilities by computer software. And there is a sub part of AI which is known as ML, machine learning, which is a subcategory of AI where a computer software is taught to draw your conclusions and make prediction for your data. So based on your teaching, your computer will take decisions. You will taught to your computer how to draw conclusions, and based on the conclusion, you would be able to predict and you would be able to make your decisions. That is called machine learning. So when it comes to Azure, we have Azure machine learning, where you would be able to uh, uh, ingest your data again. So you will train your system, then you will package your system, you will validate your packaging, you will deploy your application, you will monitor your application, and for all these process, that is known as Azure machine learning process. For all these process in Azure AI, you will get AutoML support, Azure Designer, Azure Python R support, compute resources, you will get pipelines to build your solution into Azure. So when it comes to solution, it comes under into PaaS solution, where you would be able to create, manage, and publish your machine learning models. And you can create workspace feature when it comes to feature of Azure machine learning. So you will get notebook using Python and R. You will get auto ML. So you will get designer, you will get data and compute, you will get pipelines, orchestrator. Next service is cognitive service. So cognitive service is known as where you can hear, or you can do face recognition. Like nowadays we are using devices, correct? We are using Siri, we are using Google services, correct? Google speech services, recognition services, through which we are able to give our voice command. Or in iOS phone, you are getting face unlock, correct? So face detection is there. So all these comes under into cognitive service. Correct. So you can use cognitive service and you can design your application through cognitive service as well. Then we have Azure Bot Service. Azure Bot Service, where we can create a chat bot. Similar to nowadays, there are many organizations who are using chatbots. So chatbots basically reduce your IT help desk workload. Correct, which will reduce your cost as well. Correct. How? So basically, when a customer will come, if you have some query, so you will define your predefined queries, and based on those predefined queries, there would be recommendation to your customer. So whenever customer will come, your chatbot will give answer to your customer. Like, let me give you an example. Nowadays, you're using SBI. So in SBI, if you're using mobile application, net banking application into your mobile phone, so in which you will get ELA support. Correct. So ELA is a chatbot. So whenever you have some issue, you will open SBI application and you will talk to ELA. ELA will give you few options. Okay. So if your query come under into that option, you will select that option. Correct. And you will get recommendation how you will resolve that issue. Still, if your issue is not resolved, then your chatbot will ask you to create a case where customer care executive will resolve your issue. Correct. So we can create chatbots. Through chatbots, we would be able to reduce our IT help desk overhead. So that is your service for AI ML into Azure. And we are done with our services into Azure, which we can use, which our engineer can use to build a career into cloud. Correct. Now, let me show you a small demonstration on IoT, and you all would be able to understand that how devices, IoT devices are sending messages to Azure IoT Hub. And then our webinar will be complete. So let me go to my portal, Azure portal. So this would be my cloud portal. It's a public cloud, which will be accessible by anyone. Anyone can access. So you can create your own account as well on your cloud, just because public cloud providers are offering you free tier account as well. So anyone can create account and they can test their services. They can test their application. So let me search here IoT Hub and let me create first of all one IoT Hub. So it's a managed service managed by Azure. Let me select my resource group. Resource group is a container into Azure where you will contain multiple services. You will group multiple services. Name. So name should be globally unique. That means unique on internet. So IoT is not available as you can see. So let me use some random numbers and region in which region I'm going to deploy the service. So region would be East US. Review and create this. I'm not going to configure as part. Review and create. Click on create. There would be validation. So once validation will be passed, you would be able to test this application. Arvind, yes, decision will be making by machine, but you will taught your machine that how it will make decisions, correct? So basically, we will taught our machine based on the algorithms. We will use algorithms, and based on the algorithms, our machine, our application will make decisions, correct? So for this demonstration, I'm going to deploy one IoT service into Azure, and I'm going to use one simulator which is designed on Raspberry Pi. So through which we would be able to connect our device to this hub. Let me show you. So this would be my device, which is a smart device, which you can see here. So right hand side, my device code is available, and left hand side, my device is available. There is an indicator, there is a LED which you can see. Correct. Right now, my LED is off. Just because this device is not connected with IoT Hub. So it means this device cannot send messages, cannot receive messages from the application. Correct. So what we need to do, we need to connect this device to our application, to our IoT Hub, so that we would be able to send and receive messages to IoT Hub, and we can transform those messages. We can use those messages for insights, for machine learning, and we would be able to take decisions. So wait for this deployment. It will take few seconds to deploy your IoT Hub. Once IoT Hub deployment will be done, we would be able to connect our application. So as you can see, for me, my deployment is done. Let me go to my resource. That means let me go to my IoT Hub. So this would be UI of IoT Hub, where you would be able to see insights, IoT Hub users. So messages used today, 0. IoT device, 0. There's no device connected with this IoT Hub. So now we are going to connect our device. So how we will connect our device? From left hand side on IoT Hub, you will get devices tab. So we need to click on devices tab, where you will add first of all your device which you want to connect. So let me click on add device. What would be your device name? So for me, I'm going to use my device name as a demo. Correct. And then what would be your authentication type? So you're going to use symmetric keys, which will be generated by Azure, or you are going to use a certificate which you will purchase, or either you will generate self-signed certificate, or you are going to use a certificate which is generated by your certificate authority. So I don't have self-signed certificate. I don't have CA here. So I'm going to use symmetric keys, which will be generated by Azure, and those keys will be random keys, auto generated, and this will be enabled. Let me click on save. It will save my device and I will get two keys, two redundant keys, primary key and secondary key. Let me open my device, which I have created here. And you would be able to see here, I have primary key, secondary key, and I have key string, which is known as connection string for primary and secondary. Let me show you my primary connection string. So as you can see, this would be, sorry, yeah, this would be my primary connection string in which I will get my host name, my IoT hub name, then my DNS ID, which you can see here, and my key value, key signature, which is included into this. Copy this connection string, which you will use, and you will edit your codes now. Code of your application, IoT application. So in line number 15, where I need to provide connection string so that my device will be connected to my IoT hub. So let me paste here my connection string, and you would be able to see my connection string is updated here. Once it will be updated, let me show you again from left hand side, cross check. This LED is stop, it's off, it's not working. Correct. I'm going to run my application. I'm going to run my code. So click on run. Your code will be start here. It will start running and you would be able to see your LED will flash. So as you can see, LED is now flashing. It means my device is sending data to my IoT hub. And now my IoT hub is receiving message from this smart device. That's how you can connect your device. So it's a small example, basic example. There is lots of things which you can do. Correct. Let me go to IoT hub. Let me go to my overview tab where I would be able to show you messages which I'm receiving. So here you can see message used today 3. If you will refresh, you would be able to see updated information. Correct. You will get metrics as well. You will get connected devices. So again, for metrics, it will take few seconds to give you monitoring data. So you have to wait for at least 1 minute so that you will get monitoring data and you would be able to see your messages here, which is received by your IoT hub. So previously there was no message, but right now there are 3 messages and your IoT device will be also updated after 1 minute. Let me refresh my browser tab. So once you will test this, you can stop your code. So your messages will be stopped. You can reset your application code and you can close this Raspberry Pi simulator. Here you would be able to see messages which I received 33. Correct. So now we are done with our, as I stopped my device. So there's no message. So we are done with our webinar. So now we are going to log off our session. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. Bye bye. Take care. Best of luck for your future.